This week, Dave and I do a little Christmas wrap-up as we add some eggnog to our Coffee Talk segment, the Soo Line Train Company and the Grain Line, a white Christmas arrives, my online column, and so much more. This is the Rural Reflections Podcast. Welcome, Merry Christmas, and get ready for a new year. This is the Rural Reflections Podcast. My brother Dave Nelson's over there in Carrington, North Dakota. Grant Nelson, I'm over here in Thief River Falls, Minnesota at the TRF Radio Studios. Hello, Dave, and Merry Christmas.
Morning. Merry Christmas to you, too.
Feels kind of good. I mean, this is just after Christmas that we're talking today, and we've got the new year ahead of us and lots of good hopes for a new year, one that includes something other than COVID-19. But I think right now we should just talk just a little bit do our regular coffee talk thing, only in this case, considering the season, we'll call it eggnog talk. What did you have going on this week? Did you have a good Christmas Eve?
Yeah, we had 2/3 of the group here. One of the kids one of their kids had been exposed to somebody with COVID in school, so they had to stay home until the 30th. They have to be. So we missed them at Christmas, but we're going to have a second one here coming up this weekend, so we'll make up for that a little bit.
All right. Well, in our case, we had Christmas Eve. It was just Lisa and I and a cast of hundreds of cats. No, all four of them were in there, though, with us. And Christmas Day, we went over to Lisa's mom's, and we sat there and had we had turkey and all the regular things you kind of expect with the holiday. Now, on Christmas Eve, Lisa and I were talking about it. We were like, we should do something to make it a little bit more special. So we took all the cushions off the couch, put them on the floor, and then covered them with a couple blankets and put them right in front of the fireplace. And that seemed to attract the cats over pretty well. So we got everybody into the same room for the most part, although they came and went as we went along. We were watching The Christmas Story, of course, and they came and went as it went along, and Twitch sat with me for a while, and then they crawled up with Lisa. So we really had a nice, very cozy little Christmas Eve.
Yeah, sometimes it's just really nice to have a more simple Christmas Eve without all the extra planning and all that kind of stuff. So I guess ours was pretty low key this year too. So
we were watching church this morning. That's a different thing to say nowadays, but seems to be getting a little bit more common. We were watching church, and the pastor said how she had been speaking with one of the congregants, and they had said, Christmas was kind of nice this year. There was way less stress, way less hassle, way less planning and moving everybody around and all that sort of thing. And it was more just focused on the reason for the season, the birth of Jesus. And they actually said they kind of liked it. It was kind of pleasant.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of pressure at Christmas time, and we put it on ourselves, but it is nice to have a relaxed Christmas instead of a stress-filled one, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We've been watching church too. Our church is open now, with all this social distancing and so on, but we didn't get to go on Christmas Eve. So we watched it. We've been watching a church out of Kansas City. And it's just kind of fun. It happened to be on, and we found it, and it's a church with a school, so there's a lot of kids involved, and so they have it all figured out, social distance and so on TV, and you can watch them switching from scene to scene there, and there's nobody around when they read the readings, and then just the priest when he's doing his part and so on. So they put a lot of work into making sure that they have a church service that looks like one, even though there's not very many people there.
I'm amazed at how much more production seems to be going into a lot of these church services and other social events. I mean, they're doing a lot of, even in some cases, a bit of editing to make it all a little bit better presentation. I mean, when this first started out, there was a lot of people saying, well, I've never used Facebook Live, or I've never used Zoom before, or Google Meetups, and I'm going to give it a try and see what happens. And that was a lot of pastors saying that. And now everybody's getting pretty proficient at it. Now, for Christmas, I got Lisa and I exchanged presents, of course, and the cats got presents. And one of my favorite things, Dave, of course, anything Farmall, we both like Farmall and International Harvester and Case IH. And I got a Farmall plate for a Switch. Now, I've got a little room upstairs and in back that I've changed into a studio and kind of a place just to hang out when Lisa's working and I get home in the afternoons. And she gave me this little Farmall tractor. It looks like it was probably from an old advertisement, and it's a new plate that goes on top of my Switch. And I tell you what, I really like that. That's probably my best Christmas gift of the whole year.
Yeah, some of those things are really cool, Mary put a shelf up in our computer room, I guess it's called, but it's got my Farmall stuff in it and some of my toys that I accumulated over the years, and that kind of thing. I have some of the toys from the introduction of certain pieces of machinery and so on, and so those have some value to them, not probably any more monetary than sentimental, but it's fun to have a little hangout for that kind of stuff. Some people really get into that. I mean, some people have giant offices with hundreds of tractors and things like that, and then that's not for me. I don't, I don't need 100 of them or 200 or 500, but it's just fun to have a few toy pieces and a little kind of a general theme of the stuff you like in there.
I feel exactly the same way. Let's take a quick break. Let's do our online column, and then we'll be back with more of the Rural Reflections podcast. We're going to talk about snow, so stick around. I'm Grant Nelson. This is Rural Reflections. Now, this was the week of Christmas, and I wanted to indulge myself in nostalgia. I think if most people were to recall memories from childhood, a high percentage would be from Christmas. I'm no different. My hope is my memories stir your own, which will be the nudge you need to enjoy this very different Christmas season. Years back, there was such a list of celebrities that came for Christmas Eve at our home near Viking. When I was young, our celebrities were mostly grandparents. Later on, the A list included siblings that had left the house and started their own families. I grew up in a small home, so it was easy to fill with people. There was something so cool about that crush of people. The place just felt warm. The Christmas season seemed to last forever when I was a kid. I liked going to church, but I think the Advent candle's significance sometimes lost their true meaning, as I was just hoping to get those first 2 candles lit so we could work on the next few, and finally that beautiful white candle on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve was the best. Christmas Day was just for finding out what was in your stocking and eating whatever you wanted for breakfast. Christmas Eve was celebrated in stages. First stage would be early arrivals who would drink coffee and visit while my dad and my brother Steve milked cows. Steve would come in first and get cleaned up, followed soon by my dad. Mom and Dad were children of the Depression, and I think to have a home to offer with food and children to their own parents was something that made them feel grateful and happy. Snow made gloves wet, which we dried on the heat register. I would sit near them when everyone was in the kitchen. The gloves were warm, the floor was warm, I was warm. Christmas was for everyone on our farm. The cows got a little extra straw that night, the outdoor cats got extra food, and the outdoor cattle had fresh bedding. Our dog got lots of wrapped gifts too. He was like one of the kids. It always makes me feel good to know the cattle were deep in straw that night, especially on Christmas. The practice was something I continued as I eventually developed my own little herd. Now, the Christmas Eve service at Zion Lutheran Church was elevating. The church was full, Pastor Hofferning delivered a great sermon, and someone would read the Christmas story. I anticipated the end of the service when we would pass the light from one candle to another until everyone's candle was bright and warm. I'd usually fall asleep for a little bit during the service, but I always popped up for the candle service. All the lights were turned off, and the acolytes would then light one candle, and that person would pass their light from one to another. It was symbolic of the gift of love that is Christmas, and it was awesome. A little church in a little town on Christmas Eve in the 70s, full of light and life and Christmas. I'm lucky to have such a memory. Merry Christmas. Welcome back to the Rural Reflections Podcast. Dave, I want to pick up where we left off in the first half. You were talking about some of the toys and farm tractors, that sort of thing that you have in your computer office. And I was thinking about, for my own little place upstairs, I'd like two things. I'd like a Farmall train and a Sioux Line train, because of course the Sioux Line used to go right through Viking, and that has an awful lot of nostalgia for me. And of course Farmall, we've talked about that. I mean, that's just a big part of both our lives, but I think that would be kind of fun to have up on the wall, especially that Sioux Line train. I mean, got a lot of good memories of wondering where that train went.
Yeah, those are cool. Mary has a little bit of that stuff. Her dad was a roadmaster on the Sioux Line, and he was on the Wheat Line, which is the one that went through Viking. So we have quite a bit in common with each other about the railroad and so on. I have some memories of going into the old caboose that used to sit in town. The caboose always used to stay in town for a while. I'm not just sure why, if it was just left there for the next train to come in or why, but the caboose anyhow used to sit on the siding. And so we'd go investigate that once in a while in town, and we used to go to the depot, that is not there anymore since Thief River Falls, I believe.
Yep.
But used to go there, used to see the cream cans on those train depot wagons, kind of a unique looking little trailer that they pushed cans around on and brought them up to the train car so they could put them in and send them to Thief River or wherever they went from there. So yeah, I got a lot of good memories of the Sioux Lines. Always wanted to investigate the water tower closer to Dad's farm there, but I never really got into investigating it real good. I was by it several times and looked at it a little bit, but never really got to dig into that one real good. But that was a relic of the steam days. So anyway, I enjoy the Sioux Line, and I like Farmall, so I guess I could have a place for that too.
They've got a caboose now in Viking. Jerome and Cheryl Peters have put together a little bed and breakfast, and the bed part of it is an old caboose that sits right next to the Viking Cafe. Now, on that train, of course, during the winter times, they'd come through with a big plow and plow off snow. And that's what we want to talk a little bit about now. It seems like pretty much everybody, Dave, has gotten snow. I mean, you've got it, we've got it down in the cities. It's pretty prevalent now. It's become a white Christmas.
Yeah, and I didn't really care if we had a white Christmas or not because it was so nice. I keep calling this our makeup winter because last winter was terrible. And so we haven't had anything excepting just, a light skiff of snow here and there. But now we got an inch or so last night, and it's pretty much all white around, and that's kind of nice to have, at this time of year, a little covering on the ground anyway. I don't want it to get too deep or anything, but it's nice. And Debbie in North Carolina, they have more snow than we do. It's probably gone today, because it goes as fast as it comes there, but it's good, I guess, to have a little covering of snow in the winter, just so for sure it's winter.
I was amazed at the size of the road maintainers that they put plows on. Back in the old days, I used to think those are some awfully big road graders, but I've seen some of them now, and my word, they're half the size of what we have nowadays. Plus, they weren't as advanced. I mean, everything now on the current road maintainers and graders and plows, it's all hydraulic. Way back when, it used to be a lot of pulleys and cables and that sort of thing, but they made it all work, and they're probably pretty glad to have it.
Yeah, look at the things that they pull down the interstate. I mean, they've got these trailers that are ballasted correctly, so they can do both lanes at the same time, and they just pull it like a trailer behind one of the big trucks.
Yep.
So yeah, that things have. Well, as with a lot of things, it's gotten to be on a much larger scale than it used to be.
Sure does. Now, I've been out twice so far with my snowblower. The snowplow still isn't even hooked up, which is just fine with me. I figured that probably wards off the snow, and I'm sure if I hook it up, I'm sure we'll get snow, so I got to leave that alone. But I've been out a couple times blowing snow, but it really hasn't been of any consequence. But I agree with you. It's nice to have a little insulation on the ground. We haven't had a whole bunch of cold weather until recently, and then we had some below zero temperatures, so it's probably okay to have a little bit of insulation. Always considering those drain fields and water pipes and all that other sort of thing. When you don't have the cover and you have lots of cold, of course, it can sink pretty deep.
Yeah, it's nice to get enough cold weather in the wintertime to protect the ice fishermen from themselves.
Yeah.
Get a foot of ice out there for them so they can go fishing anyway. But we've only had, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 nights below zero. One of them was about 11, 12 below. And it's just turned around again the next day to be 20 above, So it's been an ideal winter as far as I'm concerned. If you have to have winter, I'd take one like this anytime.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I know we've talked about it before with the ice fishermen. I think a lot of them, particularly in town, they have an ice house not very far from their house, and I think it's really their man cave more than just for catching fish.
Oh, yeah, because, well, you know how fish catching is. I mean, it's great fun to catch them, and it's less fun to prepare them when you get home. It's good to eat them, too, but you got to go through that preparation stage that I didn't ever really care for. I mean, it wasn't that big a deal, but it seemed like, geez, now I went out and had fun all day fishing, and now I got to clean fish when I get home.
My idea of being a fisherman is being friends with a fisherman who gets more fish than he can possibly eat, so he usually gives me a couple fillets. That's good kind of fisherman for me. Dave, you got anything else before we let you go?
No, just want to wish everybody Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you next weekend there, Dave.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There he is, my brother, Dave Nelson, out in Carrington, North Dakota. I'm Grant Nelson here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio, and this is the Rural Reflections Podcast.